In the last lesson, I showed how to write a very simple console application in C#. A console application is a program that runs at the system prompt. Now let's write a slightly more useful program, one that does a calculation. I'm Hugh, and this is the second lesson in my C# beginners course. If you want to follow along with me, load Visual Studio now and, as I showed in the last lesson, create a console application. So I'll do that quickly now. New project, console application for C#. Next, I'll just accept all the defaults. This was explained more fully in lesson 1, so if you haven't watched that, go ahead and do so first. Right, so create, there's my console application. I don't want this text or this code which Visual Studio has inserted automatically. I'm going to write my own program, so I pressed Ctrl-A to select it and deleted it. Then I start writing my code. I'm going to need to read some input from the user, so I need to have a string variable. Remember, a variable is a name or identifier that can be assigned some value. Usually each variable must be declared to hold a specific type of data. I've given this variable the string data type, where a string is a piece of text, and I've called it input. That's the variable's name. The variable declaration has to end with the semicolon. And now I need to have 3 floating point variables for the values. So I'll enter 1, double, subtotal, then the next, tax, and the third. That's the sum of the value that I'm going to calculate, grand total. Now here, one variable is called subtotal. That's the price of an item before tax is added. This other variable will store the tax that's due on the item, and that will be calculated by my program. And finally, grand total is the full store price, the full sales price of an item including tax. Floating point numbers are needed here because the money values might have pennies or cents after the floating point. $1.20, €1.45, £1 and 60 pence, or whatever currency you happen to be using. Now, double is the name of one of the floating point data types in C#. I also need to specify the tax rate. So let me do that here. It's going to be another double. Tax rate equals 0.2, remembering the semicolon at the end. Unlike the other variables, which have yet to have any values assigned to them, I've assigned a specific tax rate to the tax rate variables, 0.2 or 20%. As in my last program, I'll use console.write to display a string. So let me do that now, console. And if you want, you can type this in as I go along to check that you are doing the same as I'm doing, console.write, end with a semicolon. Now I need to put the string that I want to write, enter price, X tax, put a colon there, and end the string with this double quote. Then I need to read in whatever the user enters with console.readline. So let me do this, input equals console readline, double parentheses, semicolon. Readline assumes that everything entered is a string. So even if the user enters a number such as 100, it will be treated as a piece of text, literally the 3 characters 1, 0 and 0. Before that can be used in a calculation, I have to convert it to a floating point number. I do that by calling the parse method of the double class. Let me show you that. So go to this line here, subtotal equals double, that's the class name, parse input, semicolon. Remember, a function or method such as parse is just a named block of code. A class can contain one or more methods, and to use those methods, I need to write the class name. Here that's double, then a dot, and then the method name. Classes can in fact do very much more than that, as we'll discover later in this course. Now, I've put the input variable between the round brackets or parentheses. You can see that here. The parse method converts the string into a number, if that's possible. It can't convert the string hello, for example, that's the 5 characters HELLO, into a number. So if the user entered hello, that's going to fail. But as long as I enter something sensible, like the 3 characters 1, 0 and 0, then it can convert it to a number, namely 100. Now it then assigns that value to the subtotal variable. So if the user entered the string 100, the subtotal variable now has the floating point value 100.00. And now I calculate the tax that's due, that's 20% of the subtotal, and I do that by multiplying the value of subtotal by the value of tax rate. Subtotal multiplication operator is the asterisk multiplied by tax rate, and I then need to assign the result of that calculation to tax. So tax equals subtotal multiplied, let's move that there, multiplied by tax rate. Now the grand total is just the sum of the tax and the subtotal. So I need to add the value of the tax variable that I've just calculated to the value of the subtotal variable, and I'll do that now. Subtotal plus tax, and once again I need to assign the result of that calculation. In this case I'm going to assign it to the grand total variable. Grand total equals subtotal plus tax, and here the equal sign is the assignment operator. Finally, I display the results by writing a string. Let me do that now. So console writeLine, we've seen this many times before. WriteLine, and inside the parentheses I put the string I want to write. So I put tax due equals, we'll assume this is dollars, equals dollars. And now I want to append the value of tax that I've just calculated using the plus operator. Plus tax, and now another string, full stop. So grand total is dollar plus grand total. Check that everything's correct. Looks okay to me. I'll try it out by running the program by clicking this button up here. And so it prompts me, I enter a value, let's try, I don't know, let's try 80. And tax due equals $16, grand total is 96. Let's try it with some other value, run it again. I'll try it with a floating point value, this time 1.2. And again it does the calculation. So here we have our first useful program. It's not perfect though. For one thing, it's pretty easy to crash by entering a string that can't be converted into a number. So let's see that now. If I enter, instead of some sensible number, I enter the string hello, you can see I've got a problem. It's complained that the input string was not in the correct format. That's because the value of input, the value that was assigned to this variable, cannot be converted by double.parse into a floating point number. For now, we're just going to have to be very careful when we run this program that we only enter strings that can be converted into numbers, things like 100 or 2.5. Now, in a real-world application, that wouldn't be good enough. I'd have to add error checking to this program and error recovery so that if the user did something like that, entered a string that couldn't be converted, then my program would react in some sensible way, at least produce an error message to tell the user what's gone wrong, rather than just crashing. But that's all a bit too complicated for this early stage in this course. If you have some previous programming experience, by all means go ahead and try and add some error recovery. You can press F1 incidentally. Let me just shut this down. You can press F1 on parse And that will pop up information from the Microsoft website, you can see it here, on how to use that method with some code examples, and it does include a little bit of information about handling errors. But if you're a beginner, don't bother with that yet. Now, I want to be really sure that you fully understand how this code works. So I'm going to go through it one more time, line by line. This is information and knowledge that you'll absolutely need to have when we move on to more complicated programs. So let me run it again. Remember that I do that by clicking this button. I'll move the console window down so you can see the code and the output at the same time. Now the console window begins by displaying the string that I entered for console.write. So it prompts me to enter a value. I'll enter 100. And the program runs and it displays the output. So what's happened? When I pressed the enter key, console.readline read the information that I entered. That's the string 100, 3 characters 100. And that string is assigned to this string variable input. The value of the input variable is now the string 100. This string may look like a number to you and me, but to the computer, a string is just a sequence of characters, 1, 0 and 0, and that's not much different as far as the computer is concerned from A, B and C, or any other 3 characters. In order to do a calculation, I have to convert that string to an actual number. I pass the string 100 to the double.parse method, and it converts it to the number 100. Here I multiply subtotal, that's 100, by tax rate, which is 0.2, because that's the value I assigned up here. 100 times 0.2 is 20. The result of that calculation, 20, is assigned to this variable, tax. That has the double data type, so it's a floating point number. Its value is 20 with just zeros after the floating point. I add the value of tax, 20, to the value of subtotal, 100. That gives me 120. That's the value that's assigned to grand total. Finally, the console.writeLine method writes the string tax due equals $. Then I append the value of tax, 20, and in C#, if I append a number to a string like this using the plus sign, that number is automatically converted to a string, so I don't need to invoke any special method here. Then I append this string, and finally I append the value of grand total, 120. And the line is written out, and that's what I see. In the next lesson, I'll give you a quick guided tour of Visual Studio. This is a great tool for writing and compiling C# programs, but it's quite complicated. So I'll explain just a few of the essential features that you really need to know how to use. Thanks for watching. If you liked this lesson, give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon to be notified whenever I upload a new lesson.